All right, welcome, SOMI Docs. We are with the physician panel for discussion following yesterday, Tuesday's SOMI Docs lecture series for even physicians needing life lessons. And the topic yesterday was presented by Joe Fairless on the 3-step process for accomplishing more. And I have 3 of our SOMI Docs members here with me today to talk about some of the key concepts from yesterday and also our own perspectives on accomplishing more, the benefits, the detractors, the hows, and our feelings about it. So thank you all for being here this evening. Why don't we go around first and just share where you are, your specialty, what you're doing right now, and also an opening thought on accomplishing more for you. Kristen, would you like to get us started?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kristen. I am an OBGYN physician and I'm in New Hampshire. On the outside of my clinical practice, I am a life coach for women physicians who struggle with imposter syndrome. And for me, accomplishing more came to the forefront in my life when I was trying to pass my oral boards a couple years ago. And what I realized was how much time I was spending on things that were not helping me pursue or achieve my goals whatsoever. So ever since that actualization, my life has completely changed for the better.
I love hearing that, and we'll get into that as well. Priorities, like should we be accomplishing more? What does it look like when we force ourselves to do that? So that'll be a great point for conversation. Heather, how about you? Where are you? And tell us about your approach to accomplishing more.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So yeah, Heather Hammerstedt, I'm emergency medicine, lifestyle medicine. I practice emergency medicine in Boise, Idaho, and run a company doing lifestyle coaching around sustainable health change, specifically around food and mindset around food, kind of neuroplasticity work around how to make sustainable health changes. I also run a nonprofit in East Africa doing emergency medicine education, so have a lot of hats. So happy to be here to talk about how I manage that, well or not well, either way.
Excellent. That's a great perspective to bring as well. And Akash, how about for you?
Hi, Akash Sharma. I'm a nuclear radiologist. I'm down in Jacksonville, Florida. Been here for about 4 years. I was at another academic institution, then we arrived here, and it's been a good change for the whole family. So I basically pretty much do my day job. I think I'm the rookie of the group because I'm an impending life coach. I'll be starting my training next year, and also I'm a new entrepreneur outside of individual investing. I've started doing some group investing and other things. So just happy to be part of the group. And in terms of how I accomplish things, I think that's sort of been a new thing from COVID, giving us an artificial or involuntary stop. It led to me rethinking my priorities, and it's been a good year for really thinking about what I want to do in the next year, next 5 years, and so forth. So there are a lot of tools that I'm aware of. I have an MBA 10 years ago, so I did a lot of this psychometric stuff before, but now I'm finally trying to actually practice them for myself, the things that I teach my residents.
Excellent. Yeah, learning from what we teach, I think, is so powerful. Kristen, I'd like to go back to the concept you were sharing when you were taking your boards, and perhaps all of us can explore that. What decides what more looks like, or who decides, and when is it enough? How did you navigate that space in that challenging time in your life?
Yeah, I think it was a weird time for me in general, and I think it all kind of came to a head at that time where I had just had my second daughter. I have 3 daughters now, but at that time I was just had my second daughter, and I had was trying to lose my maternity, get back from maternity leave, lose weight, and not quit my job at the same time. It all kind of came to a head where I was like trying to leave medicine, but then also pass my board so I could be board certified, and I had this baby. And I was in this really odd place in my life where things, something had to give. And I actually kind of feel lucky that it happened to be a time in my life where I had to study for something, because it forced me to look at where I was really spending my time on a regular basis and if it was getting me towards my goals. And it was easy because it was a forced goal of not having to take oral boards more than once and go in and undergo that kind of torture that was. But the technique that I learned at that time has now propelled me forward and changed how I view my life and my time, really. So then it was more about, I need to study for oral boards. Where am I going to find the time to do that? because all we ever say is, I don't have any time. And then I had 2 young kids, and now I have 3 young kids. And it felt very impossible for me to work full time and be on call and be post call and take oral boards and have a family and do all the things. And what it forced me to do was take a very pragmatic look at my time and an inventory of the time I was spending on a regular basis, 30 minutes here, an hour there, and say, what do I need to eliminate? Like, what is not getting me closer to my goal of passing my oral boards? And what do I need to insert in those activities in the place of what I was doing before? So for me, it was a lot of like buffering with food and eating and social media. Those are my 3 big things.
Mm-hmm. And noticing that, and it can be a really hard assessment to make. We think about with patients, right? We have them bring in activity logs or food logs, but a time log can be really eye-opening. And we get these screen time alerts, from our computers and our phones that kind of pull us in and say, what actually, are you doing with your day? Or people will have Fitbits to help identify that. And really taking out as inventory can be challenging. What did you find allowed you to examine that, right? See that information and process it in maybe not such a traumatic way? You're already talking about kind of the terrors of taking oral boards. How did you face that evaluation of time?
Yeah, I think the biggest pearl that I learned from that experience was to have zero judgment of myself, and coming from a place of, because I really could have looked at my schedule and said, I'm spending 2 hours of my life a day watching The Bachelor, and like I could really harshly judge myself for that. Sometimes I'm still tempted to do that, right? Or I could say, that's an interesting choice, and perhaps I want to make a different choice if my goal right now is to pass my oral boards. So taking the judgment out of it, it sounds so simple, but we judge ourselves so much for everything. And the simple fact of just saying like, okay, this is how I've been choosing to spend my time, and do I want to change it or not, made it seem less, it just made it seem more seamless and less about I was judging my character and what I was doing wrong and what I should be doing.
Mm-hmm. So helpful. And Heather, let's move to you. And as you described all of those different roles you're playing and things that you're doing, we could see overwhelm creep in, right? Anybody could look at that and say, that's so many things. How is that even possible? Should I be doing more? When they hear that, how do you navigate that space of juggling all of those different roles and projects for yourself, and how you kind of present that to the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the points that Kristen made are valid to my life too. Like, I really am serious about planning specifically what I need to be doing in each time, and then doing what my calendar told me I should do. Because just like with food and exercise, we make a better decision ahead of time than you do at the moment, right? So if you plan it and put it in there and just do it, then you're going to stay on track. That involves not just your calendar, but figuring out some sort of like program manager that you can map out projects, finish one thing, the next thing pops onto the calendar. That's been really important for me, especially with really big projects like our projects in Uganda that are multi-level. I also am really serious about not working when I'm not working. So like choose, like my husband's always like, you are the best at working and the best at doing absolutely nothing. Like when I'm going to do nothing, I do nothing. And that I think really helps balance. Like, do I do nothing enough? No. But when I do, it feels like I'm not like half foot in work and half foot out, which I think can be even more exhausting because you're kind of doing stuff half-assed, So that's important for me. I think the other thing that I've done that's been really valuable has been to make an entire calendar that's just for me. It has nothing to do with work. It has nothing to do with my children. It has nothing to do with the nonprofit. It's just like, when is Heather going to sleep? When is Heather going to exercise? When is Heather going to plan food? When is Heather going to go take a walk by herself? And that way, like, no one can self-schedule, because I have a lot of people just self-scheduling onto my calendar when they need things. They can't do that, A, or B, if someone's like, I need you to do this, at this time, you can say, look at your calendar and see you, not just see work, and be like, nope, can't do that. So I think those things have been really helpful for me.
I love hearing this balance of pragmatic, right? So actual calendar methods and scheduling advice and tiers, and also right boundaries and non-judgment. And so accomplishing more in a sustainable way requires both, right? We get down to the details, but we also have to have that human approach to what we're doing. Thank you for
Because
bringing
like
those
we
in.
always say to everyone else, right? Like, you know, you can't fill someone else's cup unless yours is full, right? And if I'm not able to feel like I'm in my best self, I'm not going to be a good coach. I'm not going to be a good CEO. I'm not going to be a good emergency doc, right? So.
Excellent. Akash, how about for you? And you can bring in the counterpoint, or you can join in this theme with us here.
Well, I was watching Joe's talk yesterday, and I was thinking about this. You know, so I was telling Amelia, I generally have issues with things like do more with less, right? So it almost sounds like a little, you know, trying to sell something that may not be true. But having seen his video and going sort of taking a lot of other books that you might read on this, Atomic Habits and so forth, the idea is it's not that you're necessarily doing more with less. It's that it appears that you're getting more done with less time than you're using currently, right? So that's the goal, is I'm wasting time, and how do I stop wasting time? It's not that I'm somehow going to be able to do the same thing in less time. And to do more with less, you have to do more of less, right? So you have to start taking things off your plate. I just cannot do these things. The only thing I would say I've been successful in this year is when I started really thinking about what do I want to be and what do I want to do, I really looked at my portfolio, and especially at work, and started getting rid of things. I mean, so I chair the research committee, and I'm happy to do that. And I think I do a good job, but it's something I enjoy doing. So I want to keep it. But there were other things that I just want to let go. I have very good colleagues who are very helpful. So we're dividing, who's going to take over the graduate education, who's going to do other things. So being able to deliberately get rid of things is the hardest part, because as I am currently habitual to doing, say, if I just get more done tonight, tomorrow will be better. But that's such a huge fallacy. I've lived it for a decade, where if you go too late into tonight, you've already messed up tomorrow, right? So you have to put it on the calendar. You have to be realistic about what you can do. So maybe just do the right amount in the right amount of time. It may be the thing to do. That's at least how I'm approaching it right now. And I think I took a course with Christina Shenby, who's a UNC emergency doc, and she's got a great course about time management. And she sort of teaches a point that Kristen mentioned and Heather alluded to. You have calendars. I'm trying to now get to the habit of putting it on a calendar. That's the only way it's going to work. If it's not on a calendar, it doesn't exist, right? So I think for people like me coming in as a newbie, I would say on this path to say, that's a big learning. Once you start doing it, you're like, oh yeah, this is the only way this is going to work. And you can commit that 1 hour to only one thing. I can't commit to 3 things. I mean, if I do, I'm going to miss out on 2 things. So I think that has been helpful in being a little more deliberate about my calendar management and just not taking on new stuff. I haven't taken on a new project in 6 months. I'm just closing out the ones I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there's specifically tricky things that happen when you're working virtually, and a lot of people are working virtually now, and so, like, whether you meant to or not in 2020. But for me, obviously running a nonprofit in East Africa, like, I'm not there all the time, right? And so it's always been Skype or Zoom and email and stuff like that. And now running a coaching business, primarily marketing and sales on social media, and all of our conversations are virtual and everything's online. And so it's there's so many shiny objects that can pull you off track so quickly that, like, you find yourself starting to do one task, and then all of a sudden you're like 5 steps away from it, and you don't even remember what it was that you were supposed to be doing. And so I think being like really serious, like, as you said, like, less time, those boundaries are for yourself as well, of like, these are the 15 minutes that I'm going to catch up with the messengers with my clients, right? Or this is the half an hour I'm going to be writing these posts, like, so, like, and you just totally shut everything else off, even if that means shutting notifications off, putting the email down, like all of that. I think is really important to be very serious and cognizant about, because otherwise you can waste an entire day and have no idea what happened.
Mm-hmm. And maybe we'll look at that a little bit more in depth. And we have lots of different methods people use for creating their calendar. In the Life Coach School, we talk about Monday Hour 1, and maybe some pragmatic approaches that you could share with our listeners for the ways you guarantee that, both in how you schedule it, and Heather, for you, how you mentioned really being good at not working when you're not working. And I think the virtual world clouds that picture a lot, right? Because it's so easy just to, quickly do this, right? And then another hour has passed and you actually haven't been there for yourself.
And you're
And
getting
so-
the snake eye from your spouse.
Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it 10 p.m. and you're doing this? So what are those methods? Both perhaps just the pragmatic, here's how I look at my calendar, right? I use a paper calendar, I use an electronic calendar, or both. And right, the management of those feelings and that urge to just do one more thing. Kristen, how about for you? What can you share about those details?
Yeah, for me, I fell in love with the bullet journal process a couple years ago, probably around the same time. And I love it. And I urge anyone who's not familiar with bullet journaling to not go on Pinterest and look at bullet journaling. I have a very basic bullet journal. It's like letters, and I can show you, like, it's just words, and it's nothing. I'm not doodling. I'm not, so don't get overwhelmed with that. But for me, it helps to create how I want it to be. So I use that. I carry it with me everywhere I go. And similar to what Heather said, it's like, these are my non-negotiables. And it's, I need this much sleep. I need time for exercise, and I need time to make sure that I'm identifying what my goals are every single day. And when I'm doing that on a regular basis, it makes it much easier for me to identify when I'm veering off, because of course, like we all do it. We all, like, I'm going to get on Facebook or Instagram and like look at reels for 30 minutes unless I have that constant reminder of, this is what I need to do. I like the term create before you consume. So let me do my post, or let me do my email before I mindlessly scroll for a long time. So that's something that I'm constantly reminding myself, but it does take reminders every single day on repeat. And in my clinical practice, I am committed to, my charts are done before I leave the office at 4, for the most part. And I think that so many of us are so accustomed to taking work home and charting at night. But that's, if I'm very deliberate with what I'm doing during my office day, like I'm seeing the patient, I'm charting, I'm not checking my email in between patients, I'm limiting gossip or talking to colleagues. And not that I don't want to talk to people, but it's like, my time is my most valuable asset. And similar to what Heather and Akash have mentioned, is like, you have to set boundaries, and you can only do that once you recognize what goals you have for the future, and that time is the only thing that you have to barter with that. So those are some pearls I can offer.
Yeah, I love that.
We did have one question in the chat about perhaps just some brief specifics about bullet journal. So not the whole shebang.
So essentially a bullet journal is just, you get a notebook, any type of notebook. It's so easy. And then you just look at like an outlook of the year, and then break it down by months, and then weeks, and then days. And you can really take that format however you want to. So I'll use it as just an overview of, this is when I'm on call, this is when I'm off, these are my vacations. And then monthly, weekly is more about like, what are my results? Like, what results do I want this month? And then use those results to figure out my daily tasks. That's a general overview.
Yeah, keeping the end as the goal, and working backwards. Yeah, I like that.
Right.
And Heather, how about for you? What are some of those methods? Sorry, Akash, we'll come just one moment. Mm-hmm. If you're using paper, or if you're using electronic.
I don't do anything on paper. I try, and it just doesn't work for me. So I use a combination of a calendar app called Fantastical that pulls together all of my different calendars, as well as OmniFocus. I don't know if you've heard of that, but it's like a planning software, and it helps you kind of map out projects and assign timelines, and it gives you reminders. And then I very specifically plan a period of time for my planning every week, where I kind of revise the week, as Akash was saying, like, set reasonable goals for what you're supposed to be doing. Like, you think they're reasonable, but like you never really quite get to everything. So sitting down every week and revising, what that week works like, and where things are going to be depending on what I got done or didn't get done, and revising the reminders and task deadlines and stuff like that is helpful for me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thanks, Akash. Yeah.
So a couple of things, Jaz. I'm speaking to or for the people who are just starting out. When you see very accomplished people like Heather and Kristen, you get intimidated a little bit, like, they're doing things I can't do. But what you have to realize is there's more than one way to do things. So when I'm training my residents, they use review books. They want to use review books. So in my specialty, I've looked at all the review books. So I know what the pros and cons of each review book are, and I talk to the residents and say, here's the one that might work for you. So bullet journal actually is a very powerful technique for people who are more creative thinkers, who can look at a blank page and say, I'll fill this in, right? I got this, right? And they like to doodle and they like to do things. And actually, I have no, nothing I'm plugging, but there's actually a book you can buy from Ryder Carroll, who's the guy I think who invented. So I actually read the book because I can't do anything without a book. And I've looked at it, and I think it's a very powerful. But the point is, there are other things out there. So there's other, apps, and there's a new one that a lot of folks were talking about in the physicians group was called Full Focus Planner, which gives you prompts. So that one says, okay, what's your big, hairy, audacious goal? Put it down. The key is you have to put it down. The scariest thing that, of course, I'm going through this now. It's just, if you put it on paper, it's real. Until you put it on paper, it's all in here somewhere, right? So it doesn't matter what you want to use, but use something and put it down and commit and say, this one, I'm doing this one. So as Heather said, I committed to writing, and I was finishing an academic paper, and you say you'll get it done in a week until it goes to your colleagues and they start editing it. Now it's really a week and a half. So you just don't know. But the point is, I was not going to write another paper until that one was done. So I think the point is commit, experiment, explore. Look at the experts to say,
don't be afraid to fail and try something else.
Yeah, but really look at different experiences. I mean, Heather's experience and Kristen's are different. I can look at them both and try them both for a week and say which one works better for me, and that's what I'm going to adopt, right? And not be like, oh, if I couldn't do bullet journal, I failed. I mean, that's not the point, right? So I think that's very important to really explore things. There's a lot of good websites that sort of go into different journals and so forth.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we're all such different thinkers, right? Like I'm a very linear, logical, planner. And one of my partners in my nonprofit is one of those people. We'll sit down for a meeting and he's whiteboarding out in visuals and I'm like, oh my God, I can't even follow, And so he's going to have an entirely different way of planning and organizing himself. Right. I think it's important to honor that way and that your brain works specifically. So.
I think we hear in here the message that, again, there's no one right way, and just perhaps with exercise, the best planner is the one you'll write in or the one that you'll use. I've been guilty of that. I have different versions. I think, oh, this one will be the one, but until you write in it, none of them are the one. So just committing to actually trying it, you said, for a week or for a month.
It's that imperfect action, right? It's it's better to imperfectly act than, perfectly enact.
Right. Which we're all pretty good at, right? Perfect in action.
Yeah. And Akash, you mentioned in appreciating the message yesterday more than perhaps you thought, right? When you heard the title, it made you think, ooh, it's going to force me to do a whole lot more in less time, and that's not right. So what was it that pivoted for you that appeared in the talk?
If that was the title, it sort of went right by me because in the 3 points that Joe mentioned, and I wrote them down when I was listening to their work today. But so he said, first of all, he makes micro goals, which sort of remind me of Atomic Habits. You have to do a big task. You have to eat the elephant. You eat it one bite at a time. So that's his first point, micro goals. So that's great because if you make your goals small enough, you can actually get them done. And as some of my recent habits in terms of my eating habits and so forth that I'm changing, if you make it small enough and you can get it done, it feels really good. It keeps you going. Once you build a streak, you'll protect
you can amplify off of those tiny wins, right?
Right, and absolutely. And the streaks are to protect, right? So you write them down, say, here's my streak. I'm not breaking this one, and I'm adding another one, and I'm adding it. I think it does work. We probably did that in our medical training in some capacity. The next thing he said that was interesting to me, he said, you have to create a pain point. So you have to say, here's the thing that bothers me, right? It sort of reminded me of Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Why do I want to do this anyway? Well, what's in it for me? And if you've identified, and some people work, and I think it's important not to work off of scarcity. If I don't do this, something bad will happen, but to really turn into positive, right? So if it's a pain point, if I solve this, my life will be better, right? So if you find the pain point and identify it and make it relevant to yourself. And the last thing he said was you have to put in reminders. Just because you did it doesn't mean you'll keep doing it. And just because you start now, I'm a novice. I may feel differently when I'm an intermediate, and I may feel differently when I'm an expert. But that relevance has to be maintained. Your reminders may change on how you remind yourself, but you have to keep reminding yourself. So it's sort of like really recovering from something, right? Recovering from a bad calendar manager that I am, right? So whatever it might be, but you have to maintain it, and that's the maintenance is the important part. But it becomes easier when you practice it. And it's intimidating, but once you do it in small parts, it's easy. So anything that I've changed this year, when I look back and say, well, that wasn't that hard. Why didn't I do it 5 years ago, right? So, but the point that he made was those 3 points, and he does it those 3 iterations again and again for different things.
Let's look at the micro goals. And what I hear in there too is celebrating your successes. In physicians, we don't always do that. We don't always give ourselves credit for the things that we're doing because they seem just baseline. Like, well, of course I did that. That's what I'm supposed to do. But finding the way to celebrate them and lowering that bar, that's also a thing I think we hesitate to do because we think, no, we're supposed to get these lofty goals. So how do you kind of rectify that? How do you allow yourself to let a micro goal be enough? And Heather, let's come to you because I know you're working with your clients with this constantly, right? And how you're walking them through. So how do we get to micro goals and let them be enough?
I like to help people make really big, audacious goals and then break them down into manageable steps so that someone still has that end in mind about what they want. So for me, I work mostly with women around figuring out how their body and mind work around food, right? And so some of these people have been 30, 40 years of like having this information about how their body works and how food is. And so getting to that big, big goal of what they want, but then not being like, it's the number on the scale 50 pounds from now, right? It's like, okay, so let's break that down into where you want to be in 6 months and where you want to be in 3 months and where you want to be in 1 month. And so what does that mean we have to do this week and today? And so it feels like they have a blueprint. And I think that that's important for us as entrepreneurs as well, to like have that big, exciting goal of where we want to get to, but then having the everyday moment. And that's kind of how I plan for myself as well. And everything that I do is think big, work small. And if you just kind of plug away at the work, it happens.
Yeah, I love that. Not abandoning the big goal. So you're actually giving yourself the stepping stones, or even as you described, I pictured a puzzle, right? So we have to have all these pieces in place to get that beautiful picture in the end. So,
and not everybody can plan like that, right? And so sometimes you need help. You need someone else, like a logical thinker. If you're a creative mind, right, to have someone kind of help you narrow that down. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in watching who, can help people with stuff like that.
Fantastic. Kristen, how about for you? When you hear micro goals, or when you help your clients or patients even look at things from that perspective, what's been successful for you there?
Yeah, I actually use the same method as Heather. I think it's so helpful. It's been really helpful for me. The other pearls that have been really useful is when it comes to micro goals and realizing your successes is taking time every day to be grateful for what you have, which, you probably hear this 14 times a day, but what that does is it's giving your mind the habit of looking for the positive things. So in the morning, like I'll write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And some days it's that my kids woke up 5 minutes later, or whatever it is small things. And then I'll try to end my day with a recap of like what went really well today. And those I think are my way of looking at the small successes. Like I got up to work on time. I didn't yell at my kids more than a few times. Like those little things create
That's not a little goal. That's like a miracle. Yeah.
that's a pretty rare one. Yeah. So that can really help to kind of retrain your brain to look for those things and to celebrate those small wins. And another thing I wanted to bring up when it comes to goals and productivity is that I think, especially as physicians, we're so used to having like deciding that we need to make a change, and then it must be drastic, right? Like today I'm doing this and tomorrow I'm going to do something completely different and my life's going to be changed for good. And what I have found to be so helpful is allowing for small incremental changes, similar to what we've said already, but so for example, when it comes to weight loss, and I bring this up just because I'm again trying to lose the baby weight for the 3rd time, And it doesn't come to like going from, having to lose 50 pounds to this. It's what's one change that I can make right now to help me in the future. And when that becomes routine, then go to the next thing. And when it comes to like feeling like an imposter, feeling like you're not good enough, like what's one thing I can change today? And when that becomes routine, then adding on the next thing, instead of saying that I need to go from feeling this way to feeling that way in 24 hours. That's not sustainable and it's not realistic. If you can break it down to much smaller, easy things, like today I feel like I don't belong. Tomorrow I'm going to decide that for 1 hour, I'm going to kind of sort of feel like I'm a good doctor. And that's it. And then you do that for a week. And when you can feel like for 1 hour, you're kind of sort of a good doctor, then you can go to the next step. And I think for me, that's made all the difference when it comes to making changes in my productivity.
I love that. I don't claim this quote as to be my own. I think one of the Peloton instructors told me this in the last couple of weeks, but said basically like there are only 2 days where you can do nothing, and that is yesterday and that's tomorrow, which means that today you can do anything you decide to do. And I like that. I think that goes along with what you're saying, Kristen, is like you get to control today, you get to control this minute, you get to control this hour. And that's like your every choice is another chance, right? So I like that.
I like that idea of those micro adjustments as well. And I picture, if you're in a wheel and you're at the center, 1 degree doesn't seem like very much, but if you take that 1 degree out, right, the distance is huge. The change that can come from those minor adjustments is really remarkable. Akash, how about for you? Micro goals, perhaps how you learned that in some of these courses you've taken recently, or perhaps the perspective of working with the residents. Because I can imagine managing micro goals with someone going through training, it can be a challenge.
Right. So, I mean, we all can relate to our own training, when you had to read a particular book and you were expected to finish it, and it's a big book and, it's like, well, how am I going to do that? And you could cram at the end, or you can just say, look, if I just read 15 minutes a day, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but 15 minutes a day done is way better than not done. So, and listening to my colleagues here, I would say that the lessons keep coming because Christina's course, we were supposed to write a letter, pick a goal that we wanted to accomplish, and imagine you're 5 or 7 years in the future and you've already done it. And now you were supposed to write down how you overcame obstacles, right? So while I'd been thinking about it from a mindset point of view, but now when Heather said, well, you could do the same thing to a task, so when I started that course, it was a 4-week-long course. And I said, well, I'm not going to eat any sugar or flour just during this course, just for 4 weeks, because I love sugar and flour. So, so I said that to myself, well, fine, it's only 4 weeks. I can do this. But at the end of 4 weeks, what I don't know, and I keep learning, is I could say to myself, okay, let's do 1 more week. And I've been doing 1 more week every Sunday. I start every Sunday. I say, let's do 1 more week. And I don't know what's going to happen, and maybe I'll fail, but I haven't failed yet. So I think those things, with the exception of Thanksgiving, I have not eaten sugar and flour. So it's a minor thing. I mean, it's only resulted in 5 pounds lost, but I can build on it, right? And I can do the same thing with tasks. I wasn't thinking about tasks in the sense that I know I have a bigger project next year that I need to get done. And if I could break it down into what could I do 15 minutes every day when I get to work, because it has to be done at work, I can't do it from home, then that would be a good way, because then I can actually deliver my part to my team and not be stuck in February saying, oh, I didn't even start yet, right? So what you can use for mindset, you can use for task management. I think it's the same process.
And that opportunity to recommit, so each Sunday you get to choose again. And we could see that as exhausting or empowering, that each time you're not stuck with it, right? You're not mandated for it, you're choosing it. Right. And like you said, well, it's only for a week, right? And then a week seems much less daunting than 6 months. And being able to recommit each time can be so helpful.
Every Sunday I get to mourn the loss of sugar and flour for about an hour, say, well, gosh, I really miss it. And then like, oh, fine, let's go another week. Let's see how it goes, right? So that's how it works out. So and
mourn the loss and celebrate what you already did,
Well, yeah, I mean, I want to lose a lot more weight, right? So 5 doesn't seem like a lot, but it's going the right direction. So we'll just keep going. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I love that. How about the reminders? So we've talked about the calendar, we've talked about mindset. What other ways do you see reminders come into play? We talk about accountability partnerships, right? Akash and I actually found that through a different physician group. And do you use that for yourself? Do you recommend that for clients or for patients, that accountability measure? Heather, let's go back to you.
Oh, to me, did you say?
Yeah, for accountability. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of this is mindset, right? I mean, it's like the more you think the thoughts that you want to have, the more they become actionable actions and results. And so I think, when I'm talking to emergency medicine patients, you're talking about, quick things like how can you think about your body, and how can you think about this illness, and how can you, those kind of things to get people into a mindset of wanting to improve their health. When you're talking about, my clients with Holist, it's, do you believe in yourself? And if you're talking to yourself with, negative thoughts about your body or about how your brain works, about your willpower, right? You're never going to get there. But if you're replacing those thoughts with things that are going to serve you, you end up eventually rewiring your brain. I mean, quite literally, right? Because the thoughts that we have are based on the experiences that we've had, the rewards that we've had, the punishments that we've had from things that have happened to us. They're just constructs, but we get to control them. And so if you are thinking about, again, the end goal of where you want, and then working back from that on like, what are the things that I need to be telling myself and thinking so that I can make these moves, you really can. I mean, the neurons that, fire together, work together, right? So the more you can work those together, I think the best you are. I think this is all mindset, the whole thing. I mean, any sort of sustainable, whether it's behavioral change, whether it's health, or whether it's entrepreneurship, or whether it's believing in yourself as being as good of a doctor as you are, right? Like whatever that is, it's all your thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what a good illustration. And Kristen, you alluded to this with your sharing of that, right? That belief in yourself for 1 hour at a time. How do we believe ahead of time, right? So if we don't have direct evidence that we find acceptable, how do we believe in advance that we are an organized person, that we are a good doctor, that we are a kind parent, if we're not totally ready to believe that? How do we make that leap? Do you have good ways you found?
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it be confident, I guess I should say.
Yeah, it's so true. And I think for so many of us, and physicians in our training, we're kind of wired like this, that we think that our experience is what creates confidence. Like when I do so many C-sections, then I become really confident at doing C-sections. But that's not like really how it happens. How it happens is you decide that you're going to be confident at doing C-sections, and you're going to be skilled at doing C-sections, and then the experience comes later. And there might be some argument here, but I assure you that this really is the way to get to someplace faster. So if you can decide that you have whatever the goal is, or however you want to feel, you don't need to have proof of that before feeling that way. And I think specifically in medical training, that is not how we're taught to think or to behave. But if you can come from a place of, I am a skilled surgeon, or I am an organized person, and think, if I'm feeling this way about myself, and ignore the arguments that come up from your brain, and then decide, how would I act as a skilled surgeon, organized person, a person who is a healthy weight, and have an act from that place, then that's where the worlds collide in a really positive and impactful way. But it doesn't, sometimes you're not going to have evidence, especially when you're trying to grow and become someone better or different, or, achieve a skill. You're not going to have the experience until you do it. And in order to have that audacity to try it, you're going to have to eventually believe that you can do it. And that's why the thought is so important without the evidence. And another thing that I'll say about that is that I would argue with many people to say that the thoughts that you have about yourself, about that you're not organized, you're not a good surgeon, or whatever other negative thing you're thinking, you probably have a lot of evidence to prove it wrong too. you're just not focusing on that evidence because you're so used to focusing on the evidence to prove it true. So that would be another fun exercise to do, would be to write down all the things that actually prove those negative thoughts wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's such an important concept to note, because we think the fake it, right? That the good thoughts are faking it, but the bad thoughts are too, right? So they're all just these versions of a narrative we've created. And why do we choose the ones, right, that keep us in that insecure self-judgment space? And why? It's because that's what humans do, but we don't have to, right? That's the default mode. We don't have to be stuck in the default mode.
I've actually found that creating a culture of confidence and appreciativity, is that a word, in your work environment. So like if you're thinking that no one's saying, hey, like Dr. Coleman, you're a great surgeon, like what if you start telling the anesthesiologist that they did a great job, and that the charge nurse, like, thanks for your work today, like I noticed you spoke to that patient really kindly, right? It starts coming back to you. And the fact that someone's going to notice and appreciate you and tell you something, and then you start to hear it externally instead of just telling yourself internally what you can do. That's something that's been really powerful for me in the last couple of years in terms of fostering relationships.
And that positive reinforcement at the peer level has been shown to be most effective. You know, sometimes we're waiting for it from kind of the top down, but really in that level playing field, noticing one another and giving that positive reinforcement really does help with engagement, even retention. You know, if you're a practice owner, even if you're employed in a space, that actually helps reinforce that connectivity and culture. Thank you for bringing that up. Akash, how about for you, believing ahead of time? How does that come up for you, for yourself, or for your teaching?
So just listening to the conversation, I would say, you know, for me, I guess at the risk of being arrogant, or that's what it's going to be, I would just forgive myself. I mean, what I know is true is I'm a doctor. I'm going to start there. I don't have to be a good doctor today. I have to be a doctor today. And we'll just see how today goes, right? So maybe not realizing it, I've been kind to myself all this time. The other thing is what we have built in is a safety net. I have been surrounded by ridiculously smart people in my career, and I don't have to worry about me being good or whatever. I just say, well, can I be like my teachers? I had 10 teachers in my fellowship, and I learned something from each of them. And if you look at my skill set, it is a pretty good average of each of them. I'm not as excellent as any of them, but I'm an average of each of them. But what I did is, in my fellowship, I didn't have to worry about, will I be a good attending? I just had to worry about, can I follow Dr. Miller? And Dr. Miller was teaching me how to be an attending. And I think we can co-opt other people's energy. We can co-opt mentorship for the purpose of saying, before I get to be good, before I build my confidence, I will have these people that I will follow, because I can see they're on the same road and they're ahead of me. And whether they know it or not, they don't have to explicitly agree to be your mentors. You just have you can observe them and say, this is how it's done. And I feel very lucky. When I finished my fellowship, I went to private practice. At least for the first 6 months, this was true. And I tell all my fellows, you can call me anytime. And I still get text messages in the middle of the day with the case. Hey, what do you think of this case? But for the first 6 months, my attendings answered my emails pretty quickly when I would send them a tough case, right? And then it kind of starts to fall off, like, look, you're out 6 months. Come on, take over. But I think to not put so much stress on ourselves, because we always discount what we've done. I mean, you graduated, you've done something already. And if you build on that, and if you look around, and if you grab a helping hand, you've got a safety net, and you have to use it. And people have to ask for help, and people have to give feedback. And that's the only way we're going to build that positive culture, is by actually giving feedback. I want somebody to tell me the lecture wasn't good, because how will I fix it, right? I've had some really good residents when I keep telling everybody, hey, tell me, what can I change? And occasionally somebody will come and say, you know what, if you change or you talk too fast. I really appreciate that, because I know that's going to make me better when I fix it. So you're really using our network, as we're doing now, and we're out on social media helping each other. Kristen's working on imposter syndrome. So the days that I don't feel so great, I can reach out and get some guidance. So we have all these experts available who are starting to speak about things that aren't just medicine. And we haven't been paying attention to these things, right? So mindset is not medicine. Mindset's everywhere. I mean, it was true in my MBA class. I just walked in saying I was going to be one of the top 5 students. I just made that my goal. And I don't know if it was going to come true, And if it did, that's great. And if it didn't, oh well, but at least I tried, right? So I think setting ourselves some easy goals, I think probably is the way to go. And I just follow my teachers. That's my sort of trick.
Yeah, learning by those examples and knowing that it's possible, even if you haven't done it, right? It's been done and there are steps to get there. I'm curious, so you bring up an interesting point of this networking that really has expanded significantly, especially in 2020, and how we've been able to connect. And are you noticing a difference in communication within medicine and how we are allowing for success, for things to be enough, and to reach out for help? Because that hasn't always been a strength in medicine, right? You're supposed to have the answer and figure it out and, be in charge. Have you noticed collaboration shifting in this time? Kristen, let's start with you there.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, especially in the social media and the physician entrepreneur space, I think that there is this understanding that the quote that the rising tide, what is it? The rising tide raises all ships, or something like that. Mm-hmm. It really is true. And I think that, as physicians, we're kind of molded to foster more of a competition over collaboration. And when we can make that shift, then that's when the magic can really happen. And I think this comes up a lot as physicians in what we should be doing, and should we be doing more, and are we doing enough? There's this underlying current of, this is the type of physician that you need to be. This is the type of hours that you need to be working. This is the type of work-life balance that's normal and that you should be doing. And I think what's coming up finally now is that, you're entitled to whatever you want to do in your career. And if it means working part-time, then great. And if it means working full-time and becoming, the chair of a department, then that's great too. And this understanding that the perfect job is going to be different for everybody, and allowing each other that space to create and cultivate the career that is right for them, instead of graduating from residency and trying to fit into a cookie cutter job that feels wrong to you. And then you never feel like you're enough, and you always feel like you're behind. And if we can kind of step back and come from a place of, how can we work together to not only collaborate and help to actualize each other's dreams, but also to support each other with whatever our life as a physician in and out of clinical practice looks like. That's when I think we all get better and stay doctors longer and find happiness in our careers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, I've found the last 3 years of this journey of entrepreneurship to be astonishing, of how much support that I have gotten from the physicians on social media. And there's plenty of work for all of us, even if we're in the same space. And I think we're all better together. And I think, in fact, I think most of us can say that we get more support from kind of folks virtually than sometimes we get in our partners in our actual jobs, right? Mm-hmm. They may not understand what we're doing or know how to support you, or and again, don't have the same goals. So I think it's been, I think not just 2020, but for me, the last few years has been really positive in terms mm-hmm. of how what can I be on your podcast? You'll be on my podcast. Let me advertise something for you. Let me share something of yours. Let me comment on it. Like, whatever it is that we can do for each other, like we're all better together for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the promise of this group, right, for SoMe to say, what are you doing? What help do you need? What success have you had? How can we celebrate that together? Is so powerful. And having that expansive network is useful, because like you said, Heather, the people in your physical space might not have any entrepreneurial goals, and that's great. That's totally fine for them, but it can be hard to then not have anyone to explore that with. So having this wider community can be so beneficial. How about for you, Akash? How have you found networking and connection in this time?
Yeah, I agree with all those things. I think it's great that we're no longer limited to the people in our physical building, right? So people in my building didn't have MBAs. People in my building didn't look at world the way I did. But I found all these other avenues, right? I'm finding colleagues that I'm speaking with right now, and other people who understand that what I'm asking, or really what Donna's done, like 16,000 people in a room, and you ask, hey, I need a particular widget, or I need a device to start my podcast, and what are you using? You're going to get answers all times of the day because everybody wants to help everybody else. We all want to help, right? Human beings are driven to help when we see somebody in need. And we've just expanded by using social media. We usually like to say social media is a time sink and all those things are true, but it's really just a toaster oven, right? It depends on how you want to use it. And if we use it positively, it's really been helpful to be able to find people like to say, Seth Godin's, I think probably invented this idea of finding your tribe. So within all the physician entrepreneurs, there are some people who want to do real estate, some people who want to do life coaching. Even within, you start to break down pretty quickly and you start to reorganize very quickly. But it's really powerful to be able to go out there and then start normalizing emotions, right? So historically, we've taken care of patients, but we weren't supposed to be emotional about it. That's fine. I can be very objective about my patient, but when I read 20 cancer studies in a day, I go home with a certain mindset. So to be able to say, I'm just bummed out because I read 20 cancer studies today, is okay. And we're making it okay to be human. We've talked about, Samuel Shem's series that's running about being human. So all these things are allowing us to re-explore, right? Because when you go to the market or you go to a party and people say, oh my God, you're a doctor. How do you have time to aren't you just busy in the hospital all the time? Well, doctors are people too. So we're doing these other things. So this place, this congregation of like-minded people has happened. And I think it's great and it's going to keep growing and it'll evolve and it'll be exciting to be here. So it's pretty much been just revolutionary, I think.
I think in bringing it back to productivity, I think being at peace with yourself and what you're doing and feeling those emotions and making sure that you're processing the things. I mean, I'm in emergency medicine, right? I go from one room to another, from one tragedy to a tiny little well child visit to a stroke to a trauma, right? And it's like, if you don't take the time to process that, you can't effectively take care of the next patient, or you're going to not process it and end up burned out and angry and also not being able to effectively take care of the next patient. So I think it's all, intricately involved with each other.
We're hearing, right? Accomplish more requires sustainability. It requires those boundaries and caring for ourselves as human in that space. And what I hear too is to not also be apologetic when you are accomplishing more, and that can be hard too. Because like you said, Akash, at the market, they think, well, you should be at work. Why are you out at Tuesday at 10, and this isn't okay. And being okay with both, right? With how little you might be accomplishing or how much, and that it's all okay. So thank you for illustrating those. We're rounding out the hour. I want to make sure everyone has a moment to share where you are, where people can find you, of course, in SoMeDocs, but your own handles on social media as well, if you have any programs coming up. And then also any closing remarks on the concept of accomplishing more. And Kristen, I'll have you lead us off one more time.
Yeah, the closing remarks about accomplishing more is that, and this was kind of an undertone, but I just want to say it out loud, that there is really no failure. And in medicine, that's maybe not the case when it's, when it comes to our patients, but outside of medicine, and even in some things within medicine, failure is not the only option. Like, you can decide to do something and you can learn from it. And that could be from as simple as deciding to try a planner and then not liking it and trying something new. Like, you don't have to view everything as a success or a failure. You can just view it as an experiment and see how it goes. And then if you don't like it or if it doesn't work out, then you have learned something. That's still a success. And I think that's something for me in all aspects of my life that's been super helpful. And where to find me, I'm Kristen Yates DO on mostly everything. I'm most active on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but I don't really understand it, to be honest. So you probably won't find me very active there. And then my website is just KristenYatesDO.com. And I have a coaching program. And then I also have coming up on the 20th of December, for any physician entrepreneurs, I have a mastermind event that you can find more information on my website.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Heather, closing remarks and where everyone can find you.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about like how to do more and how to be productive. I just want to remind people that just because other people are doing other things and are productive does not mean you have to if you don't want to. So if you're, like, whatever you want to do is what you should be doing. Like, it's not a comparison. It's not that person's doing this and I should be doing that. It's making your own choice and choosing how to be productive in what that is. And if that means you want to, be a parent and work part-time and not do, other side gigs and be an entrepreneur, like that's your decision. You just do the best at what you want to do. I am at Mama EM Doc and at Holist Health on Instagram. I run a Facebook group called Curate Your Health, where we have about 9,000 people talking about food and mindset and sustainable health change. So if you guys want to come join us there. I also have a podcast by the same name, Curate Your Health, always looking for other docs to be interviewing and talking about lifestyle changes and what you do with work. We enroll every Monday for coaching programs around food, group programs, personal programs, mindset programs, culinary strategy sessions, all sorts of stuff that we have going on at www.holisthealth.com.
Excellent. Thank you. So many great opportunities. All right, Akash, you're going to bring us home. Oh, you're muted. Let me see if I get you.
Sorry, my laptop's down to 1% battery. I'm hoping I can get through this. So I'm a new blogger. So I have my blog on jeevan.com. Jeevan means life in Hindi. I couldn't find life because it's trademarked, but it's JEEVUN.com. I'm on Twitter at Akash Sharma MD. I'm pretty active there. On Facebook, I'm really with in mostly in the closed groups, but I'm on LinkedIn. So I've been posting on all my platforms every day. So probably easiest to find on Twitter or my website, so it's still exploring, and I completely agree with what Heather said. That's exactly what I was thinking, compare to others to see what's possible, not to be them, right? And that gives you the peace of mind to say that I'm going to try this, as Kristen said, try something new. And my daughter just brought my charger. So try something new, and if it fails, try something else new, and that way at least you get to try lots of new things. And I think if we're kind to ourselves, we're kind to each other, we're vigilant to look around at each other, who needs help, who needs a little helping hand, and just help. Because I at this point don't have a program, but I'll help anybody who needs help, because I know enough about business and other things, because it can only improve my understanding of the process. What do people want anyway? Ultimately I want to help entrepreneurs. So I think we just help each other and enjoy the process. It's really, don't forget to enjoy the process.
Mm-hmm. This has been so fantastic. So many great takeaways, practically and thoughtfully. And I hope that will help our listeners recognize that they can accomplish more if they choose to, and that they can set the boundaries for themselves. I'm Amelia Beakey. You can find me at my own personal page, Amelia L. Beakey, Bueche, and at This Osteopathic Life on Facebook and Instagram, and Twitter still remains out there. But from the Twitter panel, I have been inspired. So I've been looking. I'm now observing Twitter.
Come to Twitter
more effectively. And supporting everyone to see how amazing they already are is my goal. And having these panels each week shows that to me for my physician colleagues. So thank you for being here.
Yes,
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right.